In the spring of 2024, the city of Rafah stood as the southernmost urban center in the Gaza Strip. Its population had swelled, with over 1 million displaced individuals finding refuge in sprawling tent encampments and overcrowded residential buildings. For the Israeli military, Rafah represented the final operational stronghold for remaining Hamas battalions. On May 6, 2024, after evacuation orders were issued for the city's eastern districts, Israeli forces initiated their offensive. The weeks that followed saw the border region with Egypt transform into the primary theater of a grueling urban conflict, a battle that would redefine the landscape and the strategic calculus of the area. The operation commenced with a methodical advance from the east, as columns of Israeli Merkava tanks and infantry formations pushed into the city's periphery under the constant cover of heavy airstrikes. The deep, guttural roar of tank engines reverberated through the skeletal remains of streets, a sound that mixed with the distant crump of artillery and the high-pitched whine of drones overhead. The initial hours of the advance were met with immediate and organized resistance. From the shadows of shattered apartment blocks and rubble-strewn alleyways, Hamas fighters engaged the advancing armor. Suddenly, the quiet was broken by the sharp hiss of an Al Yassin 105 rocket, which streaked across a narrow thoroughfare and detonated against the side of an armored personnel carrier. A plume of dense black smoke billowed skyward, marking the site of the ambush. High above the streets, concealed snipers took up positions in the vacant windows of multi-story buildings, their rifle reports echoing in the confined urban spaces. Grenades were lobbed from rooftops, arcing down toward the Israeli convoys below. The tight, winding streets of eastern Rafah proved to be a formidable obstacle for the large Merkava tanks, restricting their fields of fire and making them vulnerable targets for close-range anti-tank weapons. Every intersection became a potential kill zone, every building a possible fighting position. By May 7th, the momentum of the Israeli advance had carried their armored spearheads deeper into the city. In a significant operational development, tanks reached and secured the Rafah border crossing, a vital lifeline connecting Gaza to Egypt. The air filled with the grating sound of metal colliding with concrete as combat engineers began the systematic work of demolishing structures and clearing obstacles. To forge safer corridors for follow-on forces, units from the Givati and Golani brigades fanned out, conducting methodical sweeps through the dense warren of residential blocks that characterized the eastern neighborhoods. Air support remained a constant and decisive factor, with precision-guided munitions being dropped on suspected command posts and weapons caches identified by intelligence. The ground shook with the force of these explosions, sending tremors through the already battered foundations of the city. In response, Hamas defenders employed a strategy of close-range ambushes, luring soldiers into buildings that had been rigged with explosive booby traps. Each structure became an isolated battlefield, devolving into desperate, close-quarters firefights that raged for hours in darkened corridors and stairwells, where visibility was low and the advantage often shifted with every cleared room. As the calendar turned to mid-May, the scope of the Israeli operation expanded. Forces began a concerted push toward the city center and simultaneously advanced along the strategic Philadelphia corridor, the narrow buffer zone running the length of the Gaza-Egypt border. The character of the battle evolved as engineering units took on a more prominent role. Armored D9 bulldozers, impervious to small arms fire, rumbled forward, leveling entire blocks of buildings to create wider and more defensible passageways for tanks and infantry. The relentless roar of artillery fire became a constant feature of the soundscape, providing a continuous barrage that suppressed defensive positions and covered the slow, deliberate movement of ground troops. Israeli infantry adapted their tactics, moving in small, agile formations and relying heavily on technology. Drones hovered overhead, providing real-time surveillance of the battlefield, while specialized sniffer dogs were deployed to detect the entrances to the vast network of underground tunnels that crisscrossed the city. The defenders in turn leveraged this subterranean network to their advantage. The tunnels provided them with concealed routes for movement, allowing them to reposition forces, resupply fighters, and launch surprise attacks on Israeli positions. Fighters would emerge from hidden shafts, fire rocket-propelled grenades at passing patrols, and then melt back into the underground labyrinth before a response could be mounted. The fighting reached a new level of intensity in the Tel el-Sultan neighborhood, a densely populated area that became a focal point of the battle, intense airstrikes targeted the district, causing widespread destruction. Fires erupted and spread uncontrollably, fueled by the secondary explosions of ammunition depots hit during the bombardments. The fighting in Tel al-Sultan was a brutal, grinding affair, with every street and building fiercely contested. The urban terrain, combined with the extensive tunnel system, turned the neighborhood into a fortress that had to be dismantled one piece at a time. Toward the end of May, the Israeli advance reached a critical phase. Tanks and armored vehicles pushed into the heart of Rafah, establishing a presence in the city center. The operation shifted to clearing entire neighborhoods, a slow and methodical process that involved securing buildings, neutralizing booby traps, and eliminating pockets of resistance. Attack helicopters flew low over the urban sprawl, their machine guns and rockets providing close fire support for the ground troops engaged in street-to-street combat. The defenders responded with localized, opportunistic counterattacks often launched under the cover of darkness. Small groups of fighters would emerge from the rubble to hurl grenades at makeshift Israeli positions before retreating back into the ruins. In response to these nocturnal raids, the Israeli Air Force unleashed powerful airstrikes, targeting buildings suspected of being used as fortifications or command centers. The cumulative effect of this sustained bombardment was the transformation of vast residential areas into a monolithic landscape of rubble and twisted metal, a testament to the sheer destructive power of modern urban warfare. By the beginning of June 2024, Israeli forces announced they had established operational control over the entirety of the Philadelphia corridor and the majority of Rafah. The military reported the destruction of numerous underground tunnel shafts, weapons manufacturing sites, and the command headquarters of the local Hamas battalions. Having achieved their primary strategic objectives, Israeli units began a gradual withdrawal from some of the city's central districts, transitioning from a large-scale clearing operation to more targeted, intelligence-driven raids. The human cost of the battle was significant. The Israeli military acknowledged the loss of dozens of soldiers, many of whom were killed in ambushes, by improvised explosive devices, or in close-quarters combat inside booby-trapped structures. On the Palestinian side, Hamas suffered heavy losses in terms of fighters and the degradation of its military infrastructure. The civilian population, caught in the crossfire, was profoundly affected, with thousands impacted by the displacement and destruction. This urban warfare demonstrated how the densely packed terrain and network of tunnels made Rafah a difficult area to conquer. The attacking side used air superiority, tanks, and engineering to gradually overwhelm the enemy, but at the cost of prolonged time and high losses. The defending side employed urban ambush tactics to inflict damage, although they eventually lost control of key areas and the border corridor. The result? Rafah was severely damaged, most of the population evacuated, and the area fell into prolonged ruin. Israeli forces achieved their objective of controlling the Philadelphia border and weakening local battalions, but faced persistent resistance and significant humanitarian challenges.